What's up guys, this is Chrono Joe, and today I'm here with another Uncharted 4 gameplay video, and today I'm here with a specific question, and that is Uncharted 4 competitively valid? And what I mean by that is, does the game always feel fair? Does it always feel like the correct outcome is occurring in every gunfight? Is the person that deserves to be winning the gunfights winning? Is the team that deserves to be winning the matches, are they winning the matches? And I think competitive validity has been something that's been quite an issue in a lot of games lately. Since, to be honest, the emergence of Call of Duty 4, competitive validity has been, to some extent, taken a back seat in favour of providing people with various perks and bonuses that just give them an advantage when they're not doing very well and compensate them for their poor performance. And I mean, in Call of Duty 4 that wasn't necessarily the case, but there were elements of Call of Duty 4 that weren't necessarily fair on players that weren't doing very well, or players that didn't necessarily deserve to be killed. Like, if your team is bad, why do you deserve to be the one that's killed by a helicopter, etc., if that makes sense? That never made sense to me. Like, why do you deserve to be punished by the fact that your team have been killed 7 times in a row by some guy at the back of the map? That doesn't make any sense to me. And that's the kind of thing I think about when I play multiplayer shooters, is does it feel fair, and does it feel like I'm in full control of the situation? Does it feel like when I die it's my fault, it's the result of my mistakes, and it's the fact that the opponent was better than me? I find it rarer and rarer these days to be able to say that I lost that encounter because the person was better than me, and that's because of the way a lot of shooters are designed. Like, games like Destiny allow people to one-hit kill you because they have a super. And you have no influence on whether they get that super or not, realistically, and you have no way of realistically knowing if a guy around the corner is just going to burst around and use his super on you, or maybe he's going to save it or not. You can't know. He can just pull the button and he's killed you. And to me, that's not competitively valid. I didn't deserve to die. There's no influential part of his gameplay that was skillful that allowed him to do that. And there's no failing on my part that allowed him to do that either. It wasn't because I screwed up, it was just a set of circumstances that allowed themselves to occur because the game's mechanics didn't support high competitive validity. And that's what I'm looking at in Uncharted 4, and that's what I'm talking about today in Uncharted 4. Is this game competitively valid? Now, like games like Destiny and Call of Duty, there are a lot of mechanics in this game that interact with the core gunplay, and they are the relics like the Shintamani Stone, the El Dorado, and the sidekicks like the Brute and the Sniper, etc. But a crucial component of these mechanics is that everyone has access to them within a reasonable period of time. So everyone can summon a Brute within the first 3 minutes of a game, everyone can summon a Sniper, everyone can summon an El Dorado. It doesn't matter if you're doing really well or poorly, everyone has these tools available to them. But perhaps more crucially, I would say, is that none of these tools actually enable you to get kills for free. The Sniper doesn't kill people on its own. Like, the Sniper requires people to be foolish enough to walk into its line of sight for a consistent period of time. The Sniper can be killed relatively easily by the opposing team. The Sniper can be avoided by line of sight, and the same is true for the Brute. The Brute moves slowly across the map and can be killed by focus fire in around 2-3 seconds, but the people that die to it usually don't accommodate that, and they usually don't do that. At the same time, people suffering from these set of circumstances do have the same tools available to them, and they have other tools available to them, like counters. Like, the El Dorado is a really good counter for a Brute, for instance. A Brute doesn't get out of the AoE fast enough to survive, so a Brute always dies to the El Dorado. The same is actually true for any Psychic. They all die to the El Dorado because they don't move fast enough. The only exception is the Sniper, or the Medic, perhaps, if you explicitly call them away from it. And maybe the Hunter can run through if he's running at the right path at the right time. But the point is that none of these abilities, none of these sidekicks define the encounter. They don't, you can't just throw them out and then you've killed some people. That isn't how it works. People have to be foolish enough to be killed by them, or you have to support them in a way that's intelligent and tactical. And at the same time, your opposition has the same options available to them at any one time. So if someone wants to use a Brute to counter your Brute, they can do that, etc. No one's overwhelmed because they don't have the same tools as you do in the same way they do on games like Destiny. Like, they don't have the right kill streak on, or they don't have the correct class available to them at the time. No one's overwhelmed because they have the wrong things. Like, every class can pretty much, as long as you have some sidekicks and some relics equipped, like the El Dorado or the Djinn, or even mines and grenades, you always have things that you can answer these with. I think that's the sign of a game with good competitivity, because there's always an answer to every action that a player can do, whether that be to some evasive maneuver that doesn't require any sort of gadget or tool or anything, or something explicit like using the Eldorado or using a brute of your own. And because of that, I never feel like in Uncharted 4 that when I die, it isn't my fault. It is my fault if we die. If you die in Uncharted 4, it most likely is your fault. There's almost always something you could have done or something your team could have done to avoid what happened. And there are other factors that play into this idea of competitivity as well. Like things like the spawn system interact with competitivity quite strongly. So if people are spawning on your flank constantly or behind you constantly in games like Call of Duty, and they're able to kill you as soon as they spawn, and I've seen it on Call of Duty Advanced Black Ops 3 as well, where a guy will not spawn in my line of sight, but will spawn around the next corner, and then because I wasn't expecting anyone to be there because he just spawned there, he has the opportunity to get the drop on you. Now, that's kind of ridiculous in my opinion. Like, someone shouldn't deserve to be rewarded just because the algorithm screwed up. Like, they don't deserve that kill. And in many respawnable shooters, that's a huge problem. And to me, it's a definition of a good respawnable shooter to have a good spawning system, which many fail. And in all fairness, it's very easy for the algorithm to make a mistake. The algorithm that decides where you spawn, it's very easy for it to make a mistake and have someone spawn a little bit too close to where an opponent would be, or where an opponent decides to go, and a lot of that is because it's very hard to predict the movement of another player, and especially when they can get across the map very quickly on games like Call of Duty Black Ops 3, where they can wall run across walls and things like that. You can't necessarily anticipate that a guy will be on top of the place you're planning on spawning another player. And to some extent that's forgivable, but at the same time it does degrade the game's competitivity, and a game that is devoid of that is better. And The Last of Us was generally very good for its spawns, obviously also made by Naughty Dog, but that's because the game was very slow paced, as I say. Like, it's very easy to be good at spawning players when players can't get across the map very quickly. Uncharted 4, fortunately, is pretty good in its spawn system, but it could be better as well. I have spawned next to people before, not directly next to people, with people around just the very next corner or just on the horizon, etc. And although I haven't been spawn killed by people before, I have felt that the spawns had given me a tactical advantage before because I spawned on someone's flank and things like that. And that's quite awkward, I think, and that shouldn't exist in the game. But at the same time, due to the relatively high health that you have, like the amount of bullets it takes to kill players, just by spawning on someone's flank doesn't necessarily mean you win the encounter, especially if it's a team that are there or anything like that. It doesn't necessarily mean you get to wipe their team, as it does on games like Call of Duty, etc., or Rainbow Six, Vegas 2 or something on respawnable modes, etc. You know, games with smaller amounts of health have a lot more problems in terms of respawning, because there's a huge influence on the match if someone spawns on someone's flank. Now, Uncharted does a good job of this, and that's great, but at the same time, the spawns could be better, and I'm hoping they're better for the full game. The aforementioned high health in Uncharted 4 actually plays into the notion of competitivity really, really well. Because in games like, for instance, I've been playing a lot of Rainbow Six Siege, where every headshot is an insta-kill. And in many cases, it's very clear that the guy who headshot you just absolutely did not mean to headshot you. And because of that, the inaccuracy and accidental gameplay is actually being rewarded in Rainbow Six Siege. And I understand in the context of that game it's there for the sake of realism, but there are certainly merits to the fact that in every kill on Uncharted 4, if you have to aim at them, you have to deliberately and purposely try to kill them. There's no accidental kills, there's no grenade throws across the map or anything like that will accidentally kill people. It's all deliberate and thoughtful and tactical. The game at its core is competitively valid, that everything has depth and requires skill. And that's unlike a lot of other shooters, I think, and that's basically my conclusion here. Everything in this game is avoidable, it influences the match, but it doesn't define the encounters. Everything is skillful, and the testament to that is the very fact that people are doing astronomically badly at this game in some cases. There are players going 35-0 against opposing teams, and that's because the game is competitively valid. It's because the game isn't throwing the losing players back into the match and being like, oh, here you go, why don't you have this? Why don't you have this Molotov? Why don't you have this booster or whatever, because you're not doing very well. The game isn't patting people on the back and trying to patronize them in the hopes that they'll have a better time. The game is letting the people's skill speak for itself, and that's what's causing a lot of the complete team wipes, etc. And Although in some cases that isn't very fun for the opposing team, the answer there is that it's the matchmaking's job to ensure that people are playing people of equal skill or similar skill, at least so they're not getting stomped entirely. But at the same time, like, it's always good to play people better than you. It's always good to learn from it. And the patronizing systems like the death streaks and things like that in Call of Duty that give you rewards just for dying, they don't enable people to learn. Like, they don't enable people to learn. In fact, they reinforce bad play. They tell people that it's okay to do badly. And as a result, there's no reason to learn. Just keep doing badly. Don't worry. Here you go. Here's some Molotovs. Here you go. Here's a booster or anything like that, you know? So it's really good that Uncharted actually does punish people for playing poorly, in my opinion. And it's one of the few games that does that. And it's one of the few games that's really competitively valid, because as things have changed, as times have moved forward, the notion of rewarding people for doing badly and just focusing on letting everyone have fun is been more paramount. And at the same time, although the notion that everyone is having fun if they're all getting kills is neat, it also means that a lot of the better players, a lot of the more skilled players aren't necessarily going to have fun playing your game because they are fully aware that they deserve better. Like, they don't deserve, like, if I'm playing Star Wars Battlefront, I never feel like I deserve to be killed by one of the ridiculous ATSTs or anything like that. It's not my influence that's caused that, and I think players deserve that sense of agency, that sense of involvement in a game that they've purchased, and the interactive experience needs to be interactive in a way that is meaningful and influential for the player. And in many cases, these shooters take away control and they take away the influence from players in order to give players a sense of reward that's artificial. And Uncharted 4 doesn't do that. Like, it does have all these kind of gimmicks, but none of them circumvent the influence that players are supposed to have on the match. None of them enable people to circumvent another player's skill, etc. It doesn't matter if you have an El Dorado, it doesn't matter if you have a Brute. If you're bad, you're going to get wrecked either way. And that is brilliant. Like, you deserve to be destroyed if you are bad and you're against someone better. Hopefully, the matchmaking system will make sure that you get a fair chance and you get a chance to play against people that are of similar skill. Although I would recommend playing against people that are better skilled too, because in my opinion, that's the best way to learn. Either way, that's my opinion on Uncharted 4 and the notion of competitive validity. I think the game can be competitive. I think the game is competitive. It just depends on where the community wants to take it. Hopefully, we'll see a long and prosperous future for Uncharted 4 and its competitive community, but we'll have to see when the game launches. I'm very excited for the game's launch, and if you like my content on my channel, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. This has been Chrono Joe. Peace out.